Hi everyone, it's me Priyanshi Saman. Welcome back to my channel. This is the series where I am covering this book, which is Why Bharat Matters, written by Ajay Shankar. And if you are somebody who is interested in knowing about geopolitics, international relations, and knowing about what truly a new India, which is Bharat, really is, then you can refer to this video and especially to this book. You can read this book as well. And I'm in the series and I have already covered three of the chapter, and this is going to be the fifth video and the fourth chapter because one video was for preface as well. So if you haven't watched all those four videos before, you can refer to them. And in today's video I'm going to cover the chapter number 4, which is being about back to the future, and the subheading for the same is as national security balances globalization. First of all, you must be knowing about what is national security. Like every now and then in the news and in the political science, we study a lot about national security. What does it really mean? So national security is multi-dimensional security of a nation. Like often we feel that territorial security is the national security, but actually it has many facets. For example, sovereignty and politically, economically. There are many factors with which the security of a nation is preserved. So this is the concern of national security for each of the nation. And secondly, it talks about globalization. So globalization, as we all know, so we are going to interlink all these two topics, which is being about how the concept of national security and how the idea of national security in the minds of the people that actually shapes the global arena, which is globalization. So let's start with the chapter. And first of all, Ajay Shankar in this chapter, he mentions about the instabilities. What are those instabilities? So these are the instabilities which have happened up to 2014. He says that till 2014 the globalization was very soothing, it was very calming, but after that we saw many of the instabilities in the world, in which he mentions about first about Brexit. You might be knowing about how British was initially the part of European Union, but later it came out of European Union. So this exit of British from European Union is popularly known as Brexit. And even today, now when Starmer, the Prime Minister of UK, has resigned, so this factor is also been very responsible for that. If you are currently reading newspaper, you might be knowing about it. Second point is being about how the election of Donald Trump changed the trajectory of US, because Donald Trump is more towards American first policy, which is prioritizing American interest before universalism, because US is a nation which follows the policy of universalism, like it wants to be an actor which is playing in the international level. But the policies of Donald Trump, as we are even right now facing that, the policy of US are more towards inside now, and more towards American first now. Next, third point he has mentioned about China-US tussle. So the crisis or the conflicts between China and US. Then so he has mentioned that because of these each episode, it has enhanced the realization of the vulnerabilities that economic and technology concentration had created, and because of these all things we actually realize there have been so many vulnerabilities, and that has shaped economics and technological concentration throughout the world, and concentrations have been created. For example, for technology we often think about few of the states only. For example, South Korea, we will think about USA, Taiwan, China. Yes, so these are the concentration in the field of technology, and same goes with defense. For every field there have been concentrations. So he's trying to mention the same, that these events has led us to realize that there have been concentrations, there have been the vulnerabilities that had led to economic and technological concentrations. Next, he mentions about few more events. First, he mentions about COVID pandemic. Secondly, he mentioned about hasty exit of American troops from Afghanistan. This is the event which Ajay Shankar is going to repeatedly mention throughout this chapter. How American troops, which were initially deployed there in Afghanistan when Russia during the Cold War situation, it had conflict against Afghanistan. it invaded Afghanistan. So that time US came in front in order to save Afghanistan from the invasion of Russia. So there has been historical significance of US deployment of troops in Afghanistan, but there was a hasty exit of American troops from Afghanistan. So this event is also very significant in geopolitics, or particularly international relations. So next, these are two issues. Third issue he mentions about Ukraine conflict. And fourth issue, he mentions about the instabilities in West Asia, which we are even seeing them today. But apart from that, also, I'm not saying about what is there happening between Iran and US. I'm specifically talking about other Gulf nations, and also what we are seeing, crisis between conflicts between Israel and Lebanon have also been, the skirmishes have been really very constant. So these are the issue which Middle East often see, or West Asia often see. So these issue he has considered the fourth thing. So what are these four things? So he is saying that these are the negatives of global politics. Like we often talk about the positives of globalization, positive of global politics, but these are the issue which have been arised only because of global politics. He is saying this is the negative side of global politics. Next, he mentions about what is world politics. So, world politics can be seen as something which is struggling a lot. In what? In interdependence. Like every nation is interdependent in the field of technology, finance, trade, and resources. So, this is the first point. And second, I'm going to give the contrast to it. Second point is being about every nations have there some things in their mind like security, sovereignty, privacy, and values, which means for the first, which is the interdependency of trade, finance, and resources. For that, what is important, you need to have closer linkages with the other nations in order to fulfill your national interests. But for the second one, to preserve your security, sovereignty, and privacy, for that, what is being required, we need to be very cautioned about it. We need not to be have very close linkages with the other nation, because it will make us more vulnerable. So he says that diplomacy is just being about the balance between the both. You need to have linkage with the other nation, but at the same time you need to know about the vulnerabilities that this geopolitics or globalization actually has created. The interdependence has created a lot of vulnerabilities as well. That is the other side of the coin. So next he mentions about 21st century. So he says that at the beginning of the 21st century has been really very unstable, because he mentions about the attacks, 9/11 attacks in US. So in New York, it has actually shaped the policies of US, like the US in the international arena. It changed significantly. So 9/11 attacks in New York shaped its global direction. So how does it mean, like how it has impacted US? So how it is going to impact others? So actually, if there has been such an incident which makes a country vulnerable, it means that it will give path for other countries to grow. So like here I'm giving you some of the hints that how the vulnerability of US might have helped other nation to grow, and which nation it could be. Okay, so first event he mentions about the 9/11 attacks. Second incident he mentions about the unnecessary conflict in Iran, because there were Iran wars was also going on in the 21st century. This is the second point. And third, he mentions about Asian financial crisis. So these three were the incidences in the beginning of the 21st century. Next, he mentions about China. So this is the biggest player which has came into the role now. So China joined World Trade Organization in the year 2001. So it heralded the model of globalization that have to be profound political and social repercussion in many of the societies. So China coming into the play actually changed the much of the trajectory, be it in the role of politically or socially or even economically. Next, he mentions about how different countries, different nations, they are really very vulnerable for what? For employment generation in their countries. Second, for the protection of the technologies. Third, about safeguarding their data in the digital world. So these are the concerns which every nation is being about. Next, again, he mentions about COVID. So COVID pandemic is, he mentioned that COVID pandemic was something that nobody literally had expected that such a severe threat is going to hit the world, and this is once in a century kind of shock every nation is going to go through. Next, there is a subheading in this chapter which is being about sharpening greater power competition. What is this being about? Now, everything in the geopolitics is just being a power competition. So these are some of the instances where will be getting that how countries are competing with each other to reach the level of power, or to become superpower. So he mentions about, yes, the centrality of the US or the hegemony of US we have seen very much, quite very much. But the two forever wars, first in Afghanistan and second of Iraq, these two have immensely impacted the polity of US. But what is done is done, and US has to come out much worse, he mentions, and that created parallelly economic pressure on US. And but but he says that the election of Trump there as a president of US actually was an inflection point or a critical point which changed many of the equations. So he mentions that the Trump presidency certainly marked a turning point, but many of the debates matured further during the Biden's administration. So he mentioned that how the present day America has been different from the America during Biden, I don't know the pronunciation. So Biden's administration. So first he mentioned that now presently the US is moving towards greater realism, which means now America is more pragmatic about itself and about the international interest. So, like, what is the policy of America now? Now it seeks to achieve global objectives in more cost-effective manner, which means US is trying to have a balance between the domestic revival and also the external obligation. External obligation is being about universalism, like the way US is acting in the international level. So US is now trying to balance both of the things. So next he mentions about multipolarity. So there is a sharper recognition to of an emerging multipolarity and growing strategic autonomy that characterizes current era. So present era is not just being about interdependency of the nation, but the nations also seek your self autonomy, or we can say strategic autonomy. They want to become themselves, strengthen from themselves. Okay, so I'll explain it more by giving you citing an example from India itself. So Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India project. So these are policies of the government which is more for the self-reliance of India with itself. So this was being about in this era of multipolarity what is important, because the nations are seeking strategic autonomy that is resulting in multiple centers of power. Okay, so next, I was giving you a hint before that how the vulnerability of US might have given the path for the other nations to grow, and the nation is none other than China. So the emergence of power. So China can be considered as a nation which emerged very rapidly economically. So now he mentions that. Uh, he has done a comparison between the economy of USSR and that of China. He mentioned that USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, may have borne similarities, but it never had the salience to the global economy that China has today. And the consequences of China growing capabilities are particularly significant because of extrapolation of its domestic seamlessness to the world outside. So, as there is now an ongoing debate on the changed nature of power and influence, and because of which we have seen the sharpening of the tensions on territorial issues, even with India, he has mentioned of the event that especially happened in 2020, how we are having serious border conflict with that of China. Next, he mentioned that multipolar Asia is actually the foundation for the multipolar world. Then like there have been arrow kind of these things he mentions of, Like in every chapter, he has given this a bow and an arrow. It means that now he's going to cite an example from Ramayana and how it can relate to the present day scenario in international politics. So now in this he has given a story, and this story is being about King Kanishk and Sage Vasisht. So King Kanishk wanted to seize a cow of Sage Vasisht, which was particularly a productive cow. So Sage Vasisht had a productive cow, and King Vasisht wanted to King what is his name, Kaushik, wanted to seize that cow. But for that he did many struggles. Like first initially he then got into penises, and then he became Raj Rishi. But even after that he was not satisfied, and he again wanted to attain the highest status of a Brahma Rishi. So from this he wanted to make parallels with the present day international politics. He wanted to mention that how today nations are what they are doing, they're just running in order to reach the standard which any of the nation has set. Like for example, if US has been the center of power during after Cold War, so every nation will try to reach the standard which US has created. So the similar way this can be understood from this story as well. Next, he mentions about the story of Kekai and Manthara. So, Kekai was being instigated by Manthara and to make unreasonable demand by invoking two boons given by King Dashratha. So this he has made parallels with what China especially is doing, and but he has not directly mentioned it. He has written here that how a smaller player with their own agenda can take advantage of the insecurities of the larger one. We can see that what is happening there in our neighborhood. So you can understand what he is trying to say, and it is called as a allegory in English literature. So this is just a very special example for that. And next, he has mentioned about beyond Westphalian politics, like the Western influential politics. We are going to see beyond that. So, first, he has made mention about a contrast between two of the nations. These two nations are none other than US and China. So, American retrenchment has provided greater space to Chinese influence. I mentioned it earlier as well, that how US retrenchment gave or produced a way for China to enter into the international politics, to enter into the global economy. In many spheres, China entered after the retrenchment of US was being done, after two of the war which I have already mentioned. Okay, so now he'll be telling that how the mindset of China and US have been really very contradictory. There have been no commons in between. Like in maths we study about a disjoint set. So in the similar way China and US have already always been. So China may have been a particularly beneficiary of the geopolitics in the last century. Like we are seeing the rise of the China in the last century. So we can see how China has been the beneficiary of geopolitics in the last century. Now he is telling the mindset or the ideology of both the nations. First, he mentions that US has prided itself on its universalism and consciously promoted these traits. China, in contrast, consider itself singular, and its globalization is not readily converted into universalization. First, being about US is more towards universalism, whereas China is more towards internal development for the development of its own. Okay, so it China does not want its policy to be readily it to be converted into universalization. So for US has openness and diversity while building its own unique ability to attract global talent. US want to attract global talent, whereas for China has developed formidable strength by leveraging the world even while developing autonomous capabilities. I already told you it is more about internal development, that is here mentioned as a technical term, which is autonomous capabilities. It wants to leverage the global politics in order to make its autonomous developments. Okay, and in crux, like I have mentioned earlier, that there has been a lessening of convergence in their respective worldviews, and what that will lead to the period of uncertainty, limitation, and frictions in world affairs. So this was just being about this, and next he has mentioned about the how American exit from Afghanistan, why it could have been. So he mentioned that UN has its charters and some articles to follow by all the countries. So what was happening there in Afghanistan? We can see there has been radicalization, terrorism, and dignity of the women has been often questioned, and also about minorities who are not being treated equally, and freedom to travel, inclusive governance. So these have been really very, I must say, sensitive there in Afghanistan. The condition was not very good. Maybe it can be said these were the reason for US to take its troops back from Afghanistan. So this is being about Afghanistan. Next, he mentions about Saudi Arabia, and I have already mentioned about Saudi Arabia, how important this nation was during Vande Bharat mission when we were evacuating Indians during COVID pandemic. Uh, so Saudi Arabia, if I tell, so Saudi Arabia has a greater focus on Asia, also offers openings for India. So this include IMEC initiative, I have already mentioned multiple times, with possibilities of cooperation in connectivity, logistics, and energy. There are three domains where it can open doors for India, which is connectivity, logistics, and energy. So next, he mentions in the final analysis, the balance between entrenched politics and emerging economies will determine the regional relevance of the world beyond it. He is trying to say that the entrenchment of some nations and giving the pathway for the other to grow, this is something which is going to shape the things or the events which are going to happen in international politics now. Next, he has mentioned about Europe. As far as Europe is concerned, before the Ukraine shock, it has started emerging out its fortress of mentality. Like we were saying that how European Union was emerging out of the nations, like within themselves. They were supporting each other nation, and it was flourishing a lot. But after Ukraine conflict, it has faced a lot of issues, and now Ukraine crisis obviously radically transformed the security outlook of individual state as also of collective. And now EU had that objective of we are going to change ourselves, change our conditions or the circumstances with the help of the trade. They used to say change through trade, but now these are the nations which are now seeking the world support and understanding for their development. He's trying to say. So next he mentions about Russia, how Russia has been very important partner for importing energy from. So he has mentioned that in regard to energy imports from Russia, so it also expand the aspects of commerce. So as far as Asia is concerned, European position will be necessarily be different from US because it is no longer defending global supremacy. So if we look at the example of US is more like it wants to have that position maintained of global supremacy, but EU is not in the race of attaining that position of global supremacy. So we can say that we cannot treat both US and EU in the similar fashion because EU is now not in the race of attaining the global supremacy. So next topic is being about globalization. Okay, so in globalization he is mentioning that globalization has steadily promoted greater interpenetration of societies. This could no longer be dismissed with the same degree of complacency. We cannot be complacent while considering the the higher degree of globalization, how globalization has interpenetrated our societies and made the earth a global village. He is saying we were letting in our players, we were letting in players into our lives who may believe, think, and act very differently. It was no longer just a question of importing their products. In fact, they were now operating in our territory as well. It is being about like globalization. Initially, the definition of globalization was limited or referred just with the concept of imports and exports of goods. But now we can see with the increased level of increased degree in globalization, instead of just importing or exporting goods and services, now we are seeing that how the people from outside, they are operating in our own territory. So it raises many concerns for every nations. And the next he mentions about AI concerns. So so he is mentioning that one of the major concern regarding the globalization penetration is being about AI. So AI, because of AI, what is being required? So he says that such an exposure of AI, artificial intelligence, or any other technology, so it has such exposure has naturally raised concerns about transparency and trust, and it understandably bother us if it restrains and firewalls that are our norm are not theirs. It means that he just want that if we are living in an interconnected world, so it can be even as a threat when it comes to AI or any digital technology, because any technology or AI is going to be established only on the lines of trust and transparency that requires the protection of data, that requires the security and the protection of the data in order to preserve our national security, in order to preserve the sensitive data about our country. So he has mentioned again the same line. So the extent of our exposure also has emerged as a national security concern. So this AI concern can be related with that of national security concern. So now again he has mentioned about Afghanistan. I'm not going to repeat the same point. Many of the points are just repeated in this book. Like he has mentioned it in the preface as well, that many of the things, many of the events are going to be repeatedly mentioned because he just want to cite the example to make the things better for us to understand. So next he has mentioned the global economy. So the next, there is one more subheading which is being about the arrival of the others. The arrival of the other means arrival of the other countries into the game of geopolitics. So he mentioned that the global economy is far too interlinked for it to be nationally separated in a comprehensive way. I have already mentioned that global economy has now been interdependent, interlinked in many of the ways. But secondly, he has mentioned that this interlinking is going to be restrained at a point that will be competitors clearly are not going to trust each other beyond a point. So this trust cannot be like complete trust which we are going to have with the other nation, rather we will have some refrained or restricted trust with the other nation. So this competitors are not going to trust each other beyond a point, he has mentioned, and this concern has actually raised or encouraged the nation to have autonomy and safeguarding in selected areas, and at the same time to try and develop redundancy and reliability wherever necessary. Same point again. So this has also led to a renewed focus on the export controls and technology sharing. Repeated point. So yes, this is just being about this. So yeah, now US China trajectory, again we are going to discuss about it. So how the loosening architecture that was created by the limitation of the US gave a way for the rise of China has opened up the space for others. We may have two major powers, UK and China, but we cannot say that traditional bipolarity which we saw in the Cold War is going to arise back again. No, definitely it is not going to be, because there are many new players have came into the act, and this is an era of multipolarity. Yes, there might be two global powers or superpowers, but at the same time there have been many centers of concentration, or the concentration of the power are arising now. So so what will happen now? The retrenchment of the US will give rise to the other nation to come into the play, and these gaps are going to be fulfilled by other powers in order to develop them. Okay, so they will take the advantage of this competition and they will arise into the power. They will arise in the competition of the power. So next he mentions about alliances. So alliances have been a very popular concept during the time of Cold War. But now even today if we see that, we must also appreciate that alliances themselves are product of the set of circumstances. Like we cannot copy or become replica of the other nation exactly. He has given the example of US, like how it is very impossible, near to impossible to become exactly same to that of US. So that leads to the condition like that of alliances. You will get along with the nation, not trying to imitate the nation completely, but you will get with the nation. This is the other way around how the nation are going to deal with the hegemon. Okay, so next he mentioned that economic integration and dependency may now become more determining factor in the emergence of new order. So he mentioned that how economically understanding the thing is very important for any of the nation to know that which how the new international order is going to be shaped. So, what does arrival of others mean? So, he has mentioned that a broader spread of power among the nation with less structural rigidity is exactly what defines the arrival of others on the world stage. What is rigidity? Like, if there will be rigidity on the level, on the grounds of globalization, just taking the example, it means it will lead to some refrained or restricted development of a nation, and this will lead to the nation to stagnate after a point of time. So it means that other power will not arise. The power which are there already in the power, they will be left in the power only, like they will be maintaining their position wherever, whereas on the other hand the power which could have emerged will stop after a point of time. They will stagnate if there will be rigidity in the international norms. So he says that now there has been no such rigidity. It means that other nation or the other players will come into the play. This he calls as the arrival of others. So next he mentioned of some other factors also which influences the nations. Okay, so if some facets are adequately developed, then that in itself provide enough capability to make a difference. It could be military force, in as in the past, natural or financial resources, strategic location, cutting edge capability, or an effective platform. A combination of all these creates a powerful case for the nation to have a greater influence in the international politics. Next, he mentioned about the problems of the world. So the problem of the worlds have also become so complicated that no bilateral relationship in itself is adequate to be regular solution provider. We cannot be just with the one nation. If we are having bilateral relation with the one nation, it doesn't mean that it is going to secure the nation's security or any other. It is going to fulfill the nation's interest completely. So he says that how the limited scope of bilateral relationship is actually there in present world. And he then coins a term which is minilateralism. Minilateralism are the miniature systems of relations among the small powers, or few of the states emerging together. So in which he has given some examples. He has given example of European Union, ASEAN, SAARC, GCC. So these are the example where proximity was the foundational basis for shared activities. These are the organization which has some shared interest and they come together to form an organization. But here the factor is it is just because of their geography. Here the factor was geography, because the nations were close. They came together and made organization in order to have fulfill their some shared goals. Okay, so in such a way he mentions about a few minilateral structure they can be called as. And next he say that few of the nations are also collaborating for other goals. So on some specific issues like maritime security, counter-terrorism, export controls, non-proliferation, and climate change. So these are also some other specific issue for those countries are getting together. So for this he has given example of BRICS, Quad. So these are some other associations. Then he mentions about political multipolarity. So now looking from the from perspective of India, he says that political multipolarity has an obvious set of players. Political multipolarity means, again, I have defined multipolarity multiple times. So, political multipolarity has an obvious set of players. Among them, there are P5 nations. First of all, I'll be describing what are P5 nations. P5 nations are powerful 5 nations which have permanent seat in UNSC. UNSC is United Nations Security Council, and there has been also many demands that arises that why these 5 nations are fixed to 5. At least they should have some more contribution from African and Asian continents. That is something that the issue is always been arised, but no such things action are even taken now, and there are 10 non-permanent members to UNSC. Okay, so I was telling you about political multipolarity. So political multipolarity has an obvious set of players, in which he mentions first about P5 nations. So P5 nations, among them P5 nation of UNSC, collectives like EU and ASEAN, and those individual states that are regionally important. These creates political multipolarity. So economic multipolarity, however, looks very different because it is the product of some other factors. So, like economically, if we are going to see multipolarity, so India can be considered as most significant. It has very significant or substantial trade accounts or the trade relation with that of European Union, US, China, Gulf, and ASEAN. And in the case of energy, if we are going to see from India's perspective, India has relations with Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Russia, UAE, and US. And from technology perspective, the major concentration of the technological advancement is there in the West. Okay, so and we are dependent on the Western economies when it comes to technological perspective. So next he mentions about BRICS. So he is saying that in 2023, August 2023, the BRICS was he's saying the commentary that accompanied the expansion of BRICS in South Africa in August 2023 merited some observation, and much of it suggested that US specifically and the West generally was the elephant in the room. The major issue or the major objective of BRICS then at the time was countering the Western influence. But he says that we cannot say that viewing BRICS as an organization just made for anti-Western prism, it could be misleading, he is trying to say. So he is saying that there were 6 invited states in 2023 BRICS summit. These were Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, Argentina. Sorry. So, and he mentioned that how India has very good relation with all these nations. That leads to multilateralism of India. So, I'm so much tired after speaking continuously, but this chapter is such a long chapter. I'm just trying to finish it up. So, the both current and potential member have shared interest in promoting trade settlements in their national currencies were another point of convergence. Okay, for BRICS, it is somewhat similar to that of EU. Like that EU, the nation, they have a common currency and they trade in the same currency. So the same objective was there with the members of BRICS as well. They had the interest in some trade settlement, like they will have some convergence, like they are going to have trade with their national currencies only. So this was being about BRICS. Now the next topic is being about a post-COVID world. This is again 2 pages left. Okay, so in the post-COVID world, the COVID experience had challenged the globalization model that had entrenched itself in the last 3 decades. As we all know, how much severe repercussions the COVID has made to the present scenarios. So the pandemic has certainly triggered debates on issues like supply chains, global governance, social responsibilities, and even ethics. Okay, so it has led to re-engineer the way the world works to respond to such cataclysmic events, and that has especially raised the points which were important, but it actually highlighted points like supply chains, global governance, social responsibilities. After the COVID, we got to know how significant or the crucial these things really are. Then he has contrasted in the past, defense, politics, and intelligence drove calculation with the extrapolation in the domains like resource, energy, and technology. And the pandemic, however, so capabilities, leveraged commitment, and dishonored supply chains, blocked logistic disruptions and shortages. These were being created. Okay, so the real color of the world was seen during the pandemic when there were the supply chains were blocked, logistics were disrupted, trade was disrupted, and a lot of shortages were being accompanied with all these negative factors, and which led to economic slowdown. Food security was was at the very concern, and so this was the time which led to the need for manufacturing security again. And the nature of COVID experience has also brought to fore concerns of transparency. Opacity can no longer be overlooked, and financial distress that was caused by pandemic could lead to new vulnerabilities, and we saw it also. And so he says that self sufficiency, stronger partnership, and multiplicity of the options, all of which are perceived as integral to risk mitigations. Now, for nation, these all things become very important, and we learned it from the time of pandemic. Then he mentions about how different nations have different ways they behave. He says that few practiced what they preached, and some even stopped preaching altogether. Inadvertently, so insight emerged on the interplay of the culture, interest, and values, and the world also as a workplace. So rather than just a marketplace, had a deeper interest in remaining connected. And the major objective for the whole world, even us specifically, came as the objective of including rapid economic recovery, because the major thing was the disruption of the supply chains and shortages, economical crisis. It means that now we'll have to work more in order to make the economic recovery, that too rapidly. So next in the he has mentioned about the digital domain. So every solution, however, also throws up new problems. So digital or the digitalization can be seen as a very new thing, and it is coming as a very good opportunity. But at the same time, he is writing that it has thrown up many of the problems at the same time. So he has mentioned about the concerns of privacy and security. Again, these points are repeated, but I'm just trying to conclude the all of the chapter, because this is the last page, and it has something which he has covered in the entire chapter. So I'm just going to repeat these points very crisply. So this is even more so as AI gathers stream. CET, which is critical and emerging technologies, are gaining in salience as revolution in energy, mobility, and communication. If we talk about from India's perspective, for India, this is the subject of engagement bilaterally with the US, trilaterally with Japan and Australia, and collectively with the Quad. Especially, I'm talking about technology. Okay, so the Trade and Technology Council initiative is a parallel exercise with the EU. Then he tells about how it is very important in present time to have trusted collaboration, and for that he mentioned FTA, free trade agreements. These are the choices which should not be diverged from strategic direction, and FTA actually leads to the ease of doing business, and that leads to the economical revival of the nation. So then he mentioned about the 3F, which is food, fuel, and fertilizer. Insecurity has been aggravated by trade and tourism disruption during the time of pandemic. 3Fs are very important for any of the nation, which is food, fuel, and fuel, food, and fertilizer. Okay. Next. So now he mentions in the conclusion what is the condition of the today's world. So today's world can be seen as a complex world, and this complexity of a more interdependent, tech-centric, and a borderless world where the concept of power and influence have acquired new meanings. And this is really a new era of multiple strategic competitions. and like he always conclude his every chapter with mentioning something about Bharat. So here he has mentioned that as a result there is truly disorder under the heavens, and it will take all the fortitude and staying power of a civilizational polity like Bharat to tackle it effectively. He calls Bharat as a civilizational polity, and we are going to effectively tackle that the world, what the world is throwing at us in the present scenario. With this, I have completed this fourth chapter. This was quite very lengthy chapter, so it took me around 45 minutes, which is kind of very long and going to be really very boring, but I don't know, it was this long, and even the next chapter is also very long. So with this, I'm going to just conclude this video, and I'll be coming with one more video for covering chapter number 5. And if you are watching till end, it is very a very mad respect for you. And with this, I would like to conclude this video. Thank you for watching my video. Signing off, Priyanshi Samant.